Delia was 28, 5 months pregnant, and down to the last money she had when she bought a dead motel on a bypass to New Mexico highway for $4,200. 14 rooms, a cracked sign, and a roof that mostly held. The town didn't laugh at her, which was the strange part. The woman at the diner poured her coffee and told her to fix up whatever she liked. The man behind the hardware counter sold her a padlock and a broom and wouldn't take her money. And then, one at a time, each in their own careful way, every last one of them told her the same thing. Don't open room 9. It had been locked since before she was born, and the key was still hanging in the office, wrapped in a paper napkin with something written on it. The auction happened in a back room of the county building, under lights that buzzed. 11 people showed up. Delia counted them twice because counting was what she did instead of panicking. She had driven 6 hours to be there. Her truck was a 2006 Chevrolet she had bought for $900, and the heater fan only worked on the highest setting, so she had spent the whole drive either freezing or being blasted in the face. In the envelope in her jacket, she had $6,100, which was every dollar she owned in the world. The clerk from the treasurer's office ran it off a laptop. No gavel, no chant, none of the theater. She just read the parcel number and the back taxes owed and asked if anybody wanted it. Parcel 417, 92 acres, structures included. Former motor court. Taxes owed, $3,811. Do I have an opening bid? Nobody moved for a second. Then a man in the second row raised 2 fingers without looking up from his phone. 2,000, the clerk said. Delia said, 2,500. That got her a look from about 6 people. The man with the phone turned around then, and she got her first sight of Wade Halstead, though she didn't know the name yet. He was somewhere in his 40s, sunburned across the bridge of his nose, wearing a canvas jacket with a company logo stitched over the pocket. He looked at her stomach first, then her face. Then he bid 3,000. 32, Delia said. 35, 37, 39, Wade said. And he smiled at her when he said it, and the smile was almost friendly, which was worse. Delia's hands were sweating. She had run the numbers 11 different ways at a kitchen table that wasn't hers anymore, and every version of the math said 4,500 was the wall. Past that, she couldn't afford a water heater. 4,200, she said. The room waited. Wade set his phone face down on his knee and looked at the ceiling for a moment, and then he shook his head and made a small opening gesture with one hand, like a man holding a door for somebody. It's all yours, sweetheart, he said. Sold, said the clerk, and typed something. Afterward, at the counter, while Delia signed her name in 4 places, the clerk kept her voice down. You've seen it, right? In person? Photographs. Photographs are from 2009. The clerk stamped something. I'm not telling you not to. I'm just saying, when you drive out there, don't go at night. Why not at night? There's no power on the pole. The clerk tore off a receipt. That's all I meant. Wade was leaning against a white flatbed in the parking lot when she came out, and he pushed off it and met her halfway to her truck with his hand already out. Wade Halstead. No hard feelings. None here. You bid smart. You had a number, and you stopped at it. He nodded like he was grading her. You want some free advice from a man who wanted that parcel. Is it going to be free? It's going to be true, which is better. He put his hands in his jacket pockets. That septic out there is a 1968 tank, and the leach field is under the parking lot. Whatever the county told you about it, they told you a guess. When it fails, and it will fail, you're looking at $14,000 minimum, and no bank in this county is going to lend on that building. Delia let that sit. Why'd you want it then? I don't want the building. I want the dirt. He tipped his head north toward the interstate. Those towers going up east of here need a laydown yard. Gravel, fence, lights, a scale. That parcel's the only flat ground on this side of town with highway frontage and a water tap. So you'll offer me money for it in about a month. Wade laughed once, and it was a real laugh. Sooner than that, he started back toward the flatbed and turned around, walking backward for a step. One thing. When you get out there, whatever you do with the rest of it, you leave 9 alone. He was in the truck before she could ask him what that meant, and he raised 2 fingers off the wheel as he pulled out. Delia drove out at 4 in the afternoon with the sun coming in flat and orange through the windshield. The town sat on both sides of the old highway, about 1,100 people, a school, a church, a co-op with a grain leg behind it. The interstate ran 9 miles north. That was the whole story of the place, if you wanted it in one sentence. In 1971, they moved the road, and everything that used to stop here kept going. The motel was a mile past the last house. It sat in an L, 14 doors facing a gravel lot, the office at the corner where the two legs met. There was a sign out by the shoulder on a steel pole, a big plastic face that said Sundowner in letters that had been read once, and underneath it a smaller panel that said Vacancy. A crack ran diagonally across the S. Delia got out and stood there with her hand on the truck door. The pool was in the middle of the lot, drained with a folding lawn chair lying on its side at the deep end, and about a wheelbarrow's worth of tumbleweed packed against the ladder. The doors were all shut. Somebody had swept the walkway, and not that long ago either, which made no sense for a building that had been shut since 2009. She walked the row. Every door had a brass number screwed into it at eye level. The paint was chalky and gone pink where the sun hit it hardest. The office door was unlocked. Inside, it smelled like dust and old paper and, faintly, like cinnamon, which she couldn't explain. There was a front desk with a Formica top and a swivel chair behind it. On the desk sat a rotary phone and a registration card holder. On the wall hung a calendar turned to June of 2009, with a photograph of a lake nobody in that county had ever been to. And behind the desk, screwed to the wall, was a board of brass hooks. 14 of them, numbered. 13 keys hung there, each one on a diamond-shaped plastic fob with the room number stamped in. The 9th hook was empty. Delia noticed it and didn't think anything of it. A missing key at a dead motel was about the least surprising thing in the building. Behind the desk there was a door, and behind the door there were 2 small rooms, a bed with the mattress bare and the bedding folded on top of it in a neat stack, a hot plate on a 2-burner counter. Behind a plastic curtain, a shower about the size of a phone booth. Somebody had lived here, and somebody had cleaned up after, and the cleaning had been done with care. There was a coffee can on the desk in the second room, the big kind, with a plastic lid. She would get to that. She took the key for 4 off the board later that afternoon and opened it, because 4 was in the middle of the long leg, and it would tell her the truth about all of them. The smell hit her first, and she stood in the doorway and read it. Dry dust, no mildew, no sour under it. That meant the roof had held. A room that has been taking water that long smells like a basement, and this one smelled like an attic, and there is a world of difference in what those 2 things cost. 2 beds with the mattresses stripped and stacked, a dresser bolted to the wall, wallpaper gone yellow above the headboards where half a century of heads had rested. She ran the tap and got nothing, which she expected. The wall switch did nothing either. Getting down on one knee was already harder than it had been a month ago, but she managed it and pulled the corner of the carpet up off the tack strip. Underneath was concrete slab, dry as a plate. Delia sat back on her heels in that empty room and let out a breath she had been holding since the county building. "Okay," she said. "Okay, you're not a hole in the ground." That first night she slept in the office apartment with the space heater from her truck running off a generator she had borrowed against a promise, and she woke up 4 times because the wind came around the corner of the building and made a sound in the gutter. At 2 in the morning, she lay on that bare mattress with her hand on her stomach and did the math again, out loud, to the ceiling. 4,200 for the parcel, 1,900 left. Water heaters, 600 used, power reconnect. 380, that left her about $900 and a baby due the first week of March. "We're fine," she told the ceiling. She had worked motels since she was 17. Housekeeping first, then laundry, then night audit at a place off the interstate outside Amarillo where the truck traffic came in at 3 in the morning. 11 years of it. She knew what a room cost to turn and how long a mattress lasted, and how much a person would pay for clean sheets and a working lock. She could walk into a room and tell you how long it had been closed by the smell of the carpet. That was the whole plan. Open 4 rooms by spring. Take the hunters in November, the road crews in the summer, the wind farm men who were putting up towers 30 miles east and sleeping in their trucks because there was nothing between here and the state line. In the morning, she drove into town for a padlock, a push broom, and a gallon of bleach. The hardware was half of a building. Propane took up the other half, and the 2 halves shared 1 counter and 1 bell. Behind it stood a man just about 60, thick through the forearms with reading glasses pushed up on his forehead. "You're the one bought the Sundowner," he said, before she got to the counter. "News travels. There isn't any other kind here." He put his glasses on, then took them off again. "Ruben Aguirre, Delia Rennick." He rang up the padlock and the broom and the bleach, and then he looked at the register and hit a key and the total went to nothing. "You don't have to do that. I know I don't." He put the bleach in a bag. "You got power out there?" "Thursday," they said. They'll say Thursday and come Monday. He wrote something on the back of a business card and slid it across. That's my cell. If the well pump won't prime, call me before you take anything apart. It's a 1974 pump, and everybody who touches it makes it worse. How do you know what pump it is? I worked out there, long time ago. Reuben squared up the bag and squared it up again, which was one motion too many. Listen, you'll want to open everything, air it out, get the doors off, see what you got. That's the idea. Leave 9 shut. Delia waited for the rest of it. There wasn't any rest of it. He said it flat, the same voice he'd used about the pump, and then he asked if she needed a broom handle because the one she had picked was short. She said, "Why?" "Because it's shut," Reuben said. "It's been shut a long time." The diner was 3 doors down with 2 gas pumps out front and a hand-lettered sign that said, "Card reader broke, pay inside." Delia sat at the counter because the booths were all full at 8 in the morning, which surprised her, and a woman came down the counter with a pot of coffee and stopped. "You want the decaf? I want the regular." "You want the decaf," the woman said again, not unkindly, and poured it, and Delia let her. Her name was Inez Salas. Delia got that from a man in a feed cap who called down the counter for a refill. She was maybe 45, hair pinned up off her neck, sleeves shoved back. "Eggs, eggs. You're going to want to eat," Inez said. "Everybody comes in here their first week looking like you look." "How do I look?" "Like you've been doing arithmetic since 3 in the morning." Delia laughed, and it caught her off guard because she hadn't laughed since before she left. Inez went away and came back and set the plate down, and stood there with the empty pot hanging from 2 fingers. "Fix whatever you want out there," she said. "Nobody's going to stop you. Half this town would be glad to see that sign lit again. But room 9 stays closed." Delia set her fork down. "That's the 2nd time this morning. It'll be the 6th by Sunday." Inez wasn't smiling. "It's not a joke and it's not a story, and I'm not going to sit here and explain it to you over eggs. That's just how it is out there. Everything else, do what you like. Somebody's going to have to explain it eventually." "Then let it be somebody else," Inez said, and went to get the pot. Here is the thing that Delia noticed, and it took her 3 more days to understand why it bothered her so much. Reuben had said the room was shut because it had always been shut. Inez had said it was not a story, which was a strange thing to volunteer about a locked door. By Friday, the man who came to hook up the power said it was structural, that the ceiling in there had come down a long time ago, and the whole corner was rotten. By Saturday, the woman at the post office said Ophelia had used it for chemicals, that there was something in there that would eat your lungs, and she said it while she was weighing a package, not looking up. 4 people. 4 reasons. Not one of them the same. If a room is dangerous, everybody tells you the same thing about it. That is how danger works. People agree about it. Delia started writing them down on the back of a registration card. On Sunday afternoon, she walked the row with the padlock she never ended up needing, and she found 9 between 8 and 10, exactly where it was supposed to be, and she stood in front of it for a long time. The door had been painted shut. Somebody had gone over the whole thing with exterior white, right across the hinges, right across the gap, sealing the seam with paint the way you'd caulk a window. Over the knob, they had screwed on a galvanized shed hasp, and through it hung a brass padlock gone green at the shackle. The brass number 9 was on there crooked. 1 screw at the top, nothing at the bottom, so it had swung a little and hung wrong. The screw holes for the bottom screw were still there. 2 of them, side by side, filled with paint. Somebody had taken that number off and put it back on and hadn't cared enough to line it up. Delia put her hand flat on the door, which was warm from the afternoon, and she said out loud, "What is in you?" That night she went through the office, drawer by drawer, because she needed the well permit and the septic paperwork, and she was hoping the old woman had kept things. The old woman had kept everything. The desk drawers held 4 decades of receipts in rubber-banded stacks, a box of registration cards, 3 pairs of reading glasses, and a plastic bin of light bulbs sorted by wattage. Delia found the well permit in the 2nd drawer, laminated. And in the bottom drawer, under a folded apron, she found the coffee can. It was heavy. She set it on the desk and pulled the lid off, and inside were keys, loose ones, maybe 60 of them, door keys and padlock keys and 2 car keys and a little flat one for a suitcase. Sitting on top of all of them, separate, was a brass key on a diamond-shaped plastic fob. The number stamped into the fob was 9. It was wrapped most of the way around in a paper napkin. The napkin was old enough to have gone soft, and it had been folded and refolded so many times the creases had worn through in 2 places. Delia sat down in the swivel chair with the can in her lap and unwrapped it. There was handwriting on the napkin. Blue ballpoint, pressed hard, a slanted old-fashioned cursive that belonged to a woman who had learned to write in the 1950s. 4 words. Not until somebody needs it. She read it 11 or 12 times. Then she folded the napkin back around the key exactly the way she had found it. Put it in the coffee can, put the lid on and set the can back in the bottom drawer under the apron. She was not going to open that door with a generator running and no water in the building. That was the honest reason, and it was a good one. There was another reason underneath it, and she didn't look at that one straight for another 2 weeks. The power came on Monday, not Thursday. She was standing on a 5-gallon bucket with her arm inside the sign housing when the lot lights snapped on all at once, 6 poles of them, and the whole gravel yard went white. Delia got down off the bucket carefully and stood in the middle of her own parking lot at 7 in the evening, lit up like a ball field, and put both hands over her face. Then she went and found the switch and shut 4 of them off because the electric bill on 6 poles would have finished her by December. The well pump was a 1974 Gould that had been dry since the place closed, and she did exactly what Reuben told her not to do, which was take the top off it. She got as far as the pressure switch before she called him. "Did you take it apart?" he said. "Partly." "How partly?" "There's a spring on the floor." Reuben was there in 40 minutes with a 5-gallon jug of water and a foot valve he said he had been keeping since 2004 for no reason he could explain. He primed it, bled the line, and it caught with a shudder that ran through the concrete and up through Delia's boots, and then water came out of the office tap the color of chocolate milk. "Let it run 20 minutes, he said. "That's rust, not sand. Rust you can live with. What do I owe you for a used foot valve out of my own shed?" "Reuben, buy the propane from me and don't buy it from the outfit in Clovis," he said. "That's what you owe me." The boy showed up the next morning at 7, which was 3 hours before Delia was ready to talk to anybody. He was standing at the office door with his hands in his sweatshirt pocket, 19 years old, hair still wet, a face that had not decided yet what it was going to look like. "You hiring? I'm not even open." "That's why I'm asking now," he said. "When you're open, you'll hire somebody with experience." Delia leaned on the doorframe. "What's your name?" "Benny Ocampo." "What do you do, Benny Ocampo?" "Graveyard at the truck stop up at the interstate. 11 to 7. He shifted his weight. "I'm off at 7. I've got the whole day and nothing to do with it, and I'd rather be tired than bored." "I can't pay you what that's worth." "How much can you pay me?" "50 a week," Delia said, and heard how it sounded out loud and made herself not apologize for it. "And a room. Room 6. It's got a busted shower valve I haven't fixed, but the heat works. And I'll feed you, but I cook like somebody who has lived out of a microwave since she was 17. Benny looked past her into the office, at the desk and the calendar from 2009. "A room," he said. "Room 6. Like, a room I have. That's got my stuff in it. That's generally how rooms work." He nodded once, quick, and then he had to look out at the highway for a second before he could turn back around. "I aged out in April," he said. "I've had 4 addresses since April. 2 of them were the Corolla." Delia went and got the key for 6 off the board and put it in his hand, and neither of them made a speech about it, which was the correct decision. By the end of that week, she had 4 rooms stripped, the mattresses hauled out to a rented dumpster, the carpet up in 3 of them, and a used water heater Reuben found her in a trailer somebody had abandoned behind the co-op for $220. They were pulling carpet in 3 on a Thursday afternoon, both of them on their knees with pry bars, when Benny asked the question he had clearly been carrying around for a week. "Can I ask you something rude?" "You can ask. Where's the dad?" Delia kept working the tack strip up along the baseboard. "Midland. He took a job there in July." She got the strip free and tossed it toward the door. "He told me about the job the same week I told him about her. He left $300 on the counter, and I've decided to think of that as him trying." "Is he coming back?" "No. You sound pretty sure." "I am sure because he said it out loud in a sentence." She sat back on her heels. "People will tell you the truth exactly one time, Benny, and then spend the next year hoping you weren't listening." Benny worked in silence for a minute. "Your mom around?" "She died 3 years ago in September, 11 weeks from the day they found it." "I'm sorry." "Yeah." Delia moved down the wall. "She was 22 when she had me, and she raised me by herself until I was 6, and then she married a decent man named Rennick, who gave me his last name and a bicycle. and never once tried to be more than he was. That's not bad. That's not bad at all. She pried another strip she kept a light on in the kitchen. Every single night of her life, the little one over the stove, in every apartment we ever had, and there were 9 of them, that light stayed on until morning. Scared of the dark. That's what I thought when I was little. Delia sat back again and pushed her hair off her forehead with her wrist. I asked her about it maybe 4 times growing up. Every time she said the same 6 words. It's just a light, Delia. Benny had stopped working, and every January, Delia said, she'd go quiet, take a week off from whatever job she had, and not go anywhere and not do anything. Then it would pass and she'd be herself again. 3 decades of that. I never asked her about January. Why not? Because she never asked me about anything I didn't bring up first, Delia said. That was the deal in our house. I thought it was manners. Turns out it was just 2 people being careful. She also had 6 more warnings. The propane driver said the room had black mold in it, that it had been tested and condemned, that there was paperwork at the county. The woman at the post office had said chemicals. Benny said that when he was in 9th grade, the story was that a man had died in there, and nobody found him for a month, and that everybody in his class believed it, and that everybody in his class was also aware that nobody's parents would confirm it. A man buying a starter at the parts counter told her it was structural, same as the power company man. The pastor's wife, who came out to the motel with a casserole she left on the hood of the truck without knocking, wrote on the foil in marker, "Welcome. Leave 9. God bless." Delia wrote each one on a registration card and thumbtacked them to the wall behind the desk in a row. Mold. Chemicals. A dead man. Structural. Bad luck. Ophelia's orders. 6 cards. 6 different rooms behind that one door. She stood in front of them one night eating cold casserole out of the dish with a fork. And she said it out loud to the empty office. You're all lying, but you're not lying to me. You're lying to each other. Reuben came out at the end of October to certify the propane tank, and Delia waited until he had his clipboard out and his back to her. Because some men will tell you things when they don't have to look at you. Who was Ophelia Buenrostro? He kept writing. She ran this place from 1968 to 2009. Her and her husband bought it new, near enough. He passed in 83 and she ran it herself another 26 on her own. He tapped the gauge with a knuckle. She died 2 years ago in April. 81. She's buried up behind the church. Was she your family? No. He wrote something. She gave me a job when I was 15 because my father was drinking, and she knew it, and she paid me in cash on Fridays and made me put half of it in an envelope she kept in her desk. I got that envelope when I turned 18. $1,140. He clicked the pen. So no, not family. Delia let that sit for a minute. Reuben. What's in 9? He turned around then, and he looked older than he had a second before. You've got 6 stories on your wall in there. You saw those. I saw them. He set the clipboard on the tank. None of them are true. And I'm not going to be the one who tells you the one that is. So don't ask me twice. Then tell me something. Reuben thought about it a long time. A truck went by out on the old highway, and neither of them looked at it. Ophelia never threw anything out, he said. In her whole life. Not a receipt, not a bulb, not a rubber band. You've been in her drawers. You know that already. He picked the clipboard back up. That's not a haunting. Whatever people tell you. That's a woman who couldn't stand to lose one more thing. That's not an answer. No, he agreed. But you'll notice it's not a lie either. Wade Halstead came on the first Tuesday in November with a county envelope on the dash of the white flatbed. He didn't get out at first. He sat there with the engine running and looked at the 4 open doors and the dumpster and the new water heater still in its box on the walkway. And then he shut the truck off and came across the gravel. You got water. I got water. Huh, he said, and handed her the envelope. It was 3 pages. A notice of inspection on the septic system, scheduled and not requested. A notice that the pole sign out front was non-conforming under a 1994 ordinance and would require a variance to relight. And a notice that an unfenced excavation, meaning her drained swimming pool, had to be fenced or filled within 60 days. Delia read all 3 standing up in the cold with her reading glasses on top of her head and her hand under her stomach. You sit on the board that sends these. I do. Did you send these? I voted on the ordinances in 94 and 2001, along with 4 other people, and the county clerk sends the letters. Wade put his hands in his jacket pockets. That's a true answer and you're going to hear it as a dodge, and I can't help that. What's the number? 11,000, he said without pretending not to understand. Cash 30 days, you keep whatever's inside the buildings. That's about 7,000 more than you paid, and it's more than the parcel's worth to anybody but me. And I'd be where in 30 days? Somewhere with a hospital inside 40 miles of it, Wade said. And there was nothing cruel in the way he said it, which was the thing that got under her skin. I've got a daughter 22 years old, and she had her first one in June. I know what 9 miles of dirt road looks like at 2 in the morning in February. Delia folded the 3 pages back into the envelope. No. Think on it. I've thought on it. Wade nodded slowly and started for the truck and stopped with the door open and one boot up on the running board. That room stays shut, he said. That part isn't an offer, and it isn't a request. It's just how it is out here, and I'd take it as a kindness if you didn't test it. He backed out and swung wide onto the highway, and Delia stood there holding the envelope until she couldn't feel her fingers. She drove into town that afternoon because she had not eaten anything since a granola bar at 6 in the morning, and the shaking in her hands had stopped being about Wade Halstead. The diner had 4 people in it. Delia sat at the counter and put the county envelope down next to the napkin holder without thinking about it. And Inez saw it on her way past with the coffee pot. That's county paper. It's 3 pieces of county paper. Inez set the pot down, picked the envelope up without asking, and read all 3 standing there with her reading glasses hanging on a chain against her chest, unused. Fence the pool. That one's real and you should do it. A 4-year-old drowned in a dry pool over in Portales in '99, went in after a ball and hit his head, and every dry pool in this county has been somebody's problem since. She turned the page. Sign variance is real too. Annoying, but real. $200 filing and the board's got to hear it. And the 3rd one. Septic inspection. Inez put the pages back in the envelope and squared the envelope on the counter. Nobody in the history of this county has ever had their septic inspected in November. That one's Wade. You know him. I've known him since he was 17 years old, Inez said. Sit still. She came back with a plate that had a green chili cheeseburger on it and a pile of fries and a side of beans Delia had not ordered, and she put it down and walked off before there could be a conversation about it. Delia ate most of it. When Inez came back for the plate, she had her hip against the counter, and she didn't pick it up right away. You getting rooms ready. /4 of them. 6 is Benny's. I heard. Inez wiped the same clean spot twice. Delia. Yeah. When you get to the end of whatever it is you're doing out there. She stopped, started again. You're going to get to the end of it. I've watched you 3 weeks and I know what you are. When you do, come tell me before you tell anybody else in this town. Why? Because I'd rather hear it sitting down, Inez said and took the plate. That night, she found the ledgers. They were in the office closet behind a folded cot. On a shelf, she had to move a box of curtain rods to reach. Green cloth covers, the flat kind that come from a stationery supply, with the years written on the spines in black marker in that same slanted hand. She counted them twice. 39. The oldest one said 1970 on the spine. She took it down and sat on the floor with her back against the desk, because getting back up off the floor was going to be a project and she decided she didn't care. The columns were ruled by hand. Date, name, room, nights, paid, note. The first page was ordinary. Salesmen out of Amarillo, a family from Ohio, $4 a night, $6 for 2 beds. Then, a third of the way down the second page, an entry that stopped her. 19 November, woman no name given, room 12, 4 nights, underpaid, there was a dash. Under note, in the same blue ballpoint, bus money to Roswell, did not want the sheriff called. Delia turned the page. There were dashes all the way down it. Man and 2 boys, room 3, 9 nights dash, note. Fed them. He fixed the swamp cooler. Woman, room 12 again, 2 nights dash, note. Came back. Bruised. Sent her to her sister. She went through the whole book. Then she got the next one down and went through that one. Then 1982, and 1988, and 1993. 39 books. One woman running a motel where an awful lot of people did not pay. Inside the front cover of the first book, in the top corner where nobody would look unless they were looking, there was one line written sideways, room and a key. No questions. They tell you when they're ready. Delia sat on that floor for a long time with a 54-year-old ledger opened across what was left of her lap, and what finally arrived was embarrassment at how completely she had misread the building she was standing in. She had bought a motel. She had run the numbers on a motel. 14 doors and occupancy rate, a turn cost per room. Nobody in that town had been talking to her about a motel. She got up, which took 2 tries, and pulled down the last one. 1997. It ran normal through the spring and the summer. It thinned out in the fall. The last written page was in January. There was one final entry, and the paid column had a dash in it like 600 entries before it, and then somebody had taken a ruler and drawn a hard line all the way across the page underneath it. Below the line, 4 words in blue ballpoint, 9 stays made up. Delia turned the page. Blank. She turned another one, and the rest of the book was empty. 90 pages of ruled columns that a woman had bought and never used, and then 13 more winters of running that place with nothing written down at all. She looked at the clock on the desk. 4 minutes after 4 in the morning, she put the book on the desk, took her coat off the hook and went out to the truck for the bolt cutters. The padlock went in about 4 seconds. Whoever hung it had bought a $12 brass lock, and brass cuts like cheese. The door didn't move. Delia stood there in the cold, with the bolt cutters hanging from one hand, and figured out what she was actually looking at: the paint. Somebody had gone around that whole door with a brush and sealed the seam, and 15 coats of desert sun had turned it into a gasket. She went and got a utility knife. It took her 22 minutes. She had to go around 3 times, top, both sides, and along the sill, and the last pass she did on her knees with the knife held backward, and her back sent a warning down her left leg that she ignored. Paint came off in long white curls onto the concrete walkway. When she finally put her shoulder into it, the door gave all at once with a crack, and she went into the room about 1.5 feet farther than she meant to. Then she stood still. It was cold in there, colder than outside, which is what a shut room does. It smelled like cedar and dust and something faintly sweet underneath, and the sweet thing turned out to be a bar of soap still in its paper on the bathroom sink. Delia found the switch, and it worked. Because of course it worked, because the woman who owned this place had left the breaker on all that time. There were 2 beds. The one by the window was made. Not made the way a motel makes a bed for a stranger. Made tight chenille bedspread pulled square. Corners folded under. 2 pillows stacked and set against the headboard. Somebody had turned the top sheet down 4 inches over the blanket and creased it flat with the side of their hand. The dust on it was thin and even, and under the dust it was clean. There was a chair pulled up to the window. It was a kitchen chair, wood, not motel furniture at all, and it had been carried in from somewhere else and set facing the glass. The curtain behind it was pushed back and hooked over a nail somebody had driven into the frame so that the window looked straight out across the lot at the highway. The seat was worn through the varnish in 2 places, one under each leg of whoever had sat there. Delia looked at that chair for a while, and then she went and stood behind it and looked where it looked. From that window you could see the shoulder of the old highway and about a mile of it running west, and the pole out front with the sign on it, and nothing else at all. She thought about a woman closing a motel in 2009 and living alone in the back of it for 13 more winters, and coming into this room, and sitting in this chair, and watching that road. The other bed was covered in bags. That was the first thing that broke through. The sheer amount of it. Suitcases, the old hard-sided kind with brass corners, a green army duffel, 2 grocery sacks folded over and taped shut. Under the window sat a footlocker with a rope handle. On top of the pile lay a child's backpack with a cartoon on it that Delia recognized from her own childhood, and beside it, upright on the dresser, a tan leather purse that looked like somebody had set it down for a second. They were stacked along both walls, under the far bed, on the far bed, and in the closet with the door standing open. Every single one had a tag on it. Delia crossed the room and picked up the nearest tag. It was a shipping tag, the manila kind with a string and a metal eyelet. And on it, in blue ballpoint, in that slanted hand she had been reading for 6 hours, Cortez R. April, 1976. She put it down. Picked up another. Lehman's, Dale. September 1981. Another. Boy, no name given. February 1984. About 14. Delia stood in the middle of that room with her hand over her mouth and counted them. It took her 3 tries because she kept losing her place. 31. On the back of the door there was a sheet of notebook paper thumbtacked at the 4 corners. Gone brittle and yellow. Names down the left side in a column, dates on the right. 40 of them. 9 had a single line drawn through them. 9 collected. 31 still waiting. The last name on the list was written in different ink from all the rest. A black pen instead of blue. pressed so hard it had gone through the paper. Delia didn't read it. She looked at it and her eyes slid off it, and she turned around and sat down on the made bed, which she should not have done, and the bedspread took her weight and held. She was there for a while. What she said out loud to a woman she had never met, who had been in the ground behind the church for 2 winters, was this: "What is wrong with you?" She waited, which is a thing people do in empty rooms. "You kept their stuff, you kept their kids' stuff. There's a backpack in here." Her voice came out wrong, too loud for the size of the room. 31 people, and you just... What? You just sat out here with the light on. The heater in the corner clicked and did nothing, because it had no propane in it. "I'm sorry," Delia said about a minute later. "I'm sorry. That's not fair. I don't know what you were doing." She tried to get up and her lower back seized on the left side and put her right back down, and she sat there with her hand flat on the bedspread and her eyes stinging, and what she started crying about was the space heater from her truck, which had quit 2 nights ago, and which she could not afford to replace before December. She cried about the heater for 11 minutes. It was not about the heater, and she knew it. She kept crying about the heater anyway, because it was 4 in the morning and the heater was the only thing in her life small enough to cry about. Benny got off shift at 7 and pulled into the lot and saw the open door. He came down the walkway fast and stopped in the doorway and didn't come in. "Oh," he said. Delia was on the floor by the footlocker with a registration card and a pen writing down names. "Morning. Does anybody know?" "You know." Benny looked at the bags, then at the made bed, then at Delia sitting on the carpet in a coat with her knees apart because there was no other way for her to sit anymore. "That's a lot of suitcases." 31. "What's in them?" "I haven't opened one," Delia said. "And I'm not going to. Not one. Until I know who it belongs to. That's the rule. You want to help, that's the rule." Benny came in and crouched down and picked up a tag and read it and put it back exactly where it had been, and the care he took doing it told her everything about the 4 addresses since April. "So what happens to them?" He said, "To what?" "To all of this." He gestured at the room without really pointing at any of it. "You can't rent a room with 31 suitcases in it, and you can't put it in a dumpster. No. So what happens?" Delia looked at the cards in her hand. She had known the answer since about 4:30 in the morning, and had not said it out loud yet, and saying it out loud was going to make it a thing she had to do. "I take them back," she said. Benny sat down on the carpet across from her. "To who?" "To whoever's left." She squared the cards on her knee. "Some of these people are dead. Some of them moved to Phoenix in 1982, and there's no finding them. But some of them have a daughter or a brother or a kid at that school, and those ones I can do. That's going to make people mad." "I know. Like, really mad." "Benny," she said, "I know." By 11, the whole town knew, and Delia never did find out who said it first. Benny swore it wasn't him, and she believed him. She thought later it was probably the propane driver, who came at 9:30 and would have seen the white curls of paint all over the walkway and the door standing open and drawn the obvious conclusion. Ruben's truck came in at 12:15. He didn't say anything. He walked down the row past 8 and stopped in the doorway of 9 with his hat in his hand, and he stood there so long that Delia stopped writing and looked up at him. "Ruben. Since I was 15, he said. I have walked past that door my whole life, and I have never one time stood in front of it with it open. You knew. I helped her. He came in 2 steps. I was 15. There was a man left a footlocker in 1980, and Ophelia couldn't lift it, and she called down to my father's house, and I came up and carried it in here for her, and she gave me $1. He looked at the footlocker under the window. That one. Right there. I'd know the rope. Delia set the card down. Tell me the real reason nobody wanted this open. Ruben turned his hat around in his hands, one full time. Because it's a list, he said. That paper on the back of the door. That's every person who came through here running from something and didn't come back for their things. He nodded at it without looking at it. And most of what they were running from lives in this town, Delia. Some of it's still alive. Some of it's got grandkids at the school. So it's not the room. It was never the room. Ruben finally looked at the tags. There's a name on that door that belongs to a man who sat in the pew behind me every Sunday of my life and never once got asked a question about his wife. There's a name on there that's the reason a family in this county doesn't speak to another family in this county, and nobody under 50 knows why anymore. And people would rather it stayed shut. People would rather it stayed shut, he agreed. They're not bad people. Every one of them just figured somebody else would be the one to open it. And then 4 decades went by. Delia looked around at the bags. A room is just a room until somebody decides it isn't, she said. Ophelia decided. Everybody after her just agreed with her without ever asking her what she meant. Reuben didn't answer that. He put his hat on. You're going to want to go into town today, he said. Not tomorrow, today. Before it hardens. She went in at 2 in the afternoon and she should have gone at 9. The diner had 11 people in it, which at 2 in the afternoon in that town was everybody who wasn't at work. It got quiet in stages, table by table, until the only sound in the building was the fryer. Inez came out from the kitchen wiping her hands on a towel and stopped behind the register. You opened it. This morning. 4 in the morning. You opened it, Inez said again, and her voice had gone thin. I asked you one thing. I asked you one single thing in this whole town, and it was to come tell me first. I was going to. I've been in that room since 4 and Reuben came at noon and told me to get in here before it hardened, and he was right, and I'm here. You're here after. Inez threw the towel under the counter. 9 hours after, so I got to hear it from Dolores at the co-op who heard it from a propane driver. Inez, don't. The whole room was listening and not one person was looking. There's a list on the back of that door, Delia said, and she said it quietly, and Inez's hands went still on the register. I haven't read it. I got about 4 names in and I stopped. And I stopped because I realized I was going to be reading the names of people who were sitting in this room. Inez stared at her. Then don't read it. I own it, Delia said. I bought it for $4,200 and I didn't know what I was buying and now it's mine. Somebody has to read it. Why? Because they're still in there, Delia said. Whoever they are. 31 people who left something behind in this town, and every one of them has been sitting in the dark in a room with the bed made since before I was born. Inez put both hands flat on the counter. Do you know what you sound like? No. You sound like a woman who just got here. Her voice didn't rise. That was the worst part of it. You've been in this county 19 days. 19. And you're going to walk around handing people the worst week of their life in a suitcase. And then you're going to have your baby here and raise her here and sit in my diner every Tuesday. And you're going to wonder why nobody looks at you. That may be true. It is true. It might still be worth it. Then be somebody else, Inez said and walked into the kitchen, and the door swung twice behind her and stopped. Delia stood there in front of 11 people who were all extremely interested in their plates. Then she went out and sat in her truck in front of the gas pumps for a minute before she could turn the key. The white flatbed came in off the highway and stopped nose to nose with her, close enough that she could see the county sticker on his windshield, and Wade Halstead sat there behind his own wheel and looked at her. He didn't get out. He rolled the window down about a third of the way, so she rolled hers down too. Was it worth it? He said. I don't know yet. No, I don't imagine you do. He had both hands on the top of the steering wheel. You've got a lot of paper in there that isn't yours. It came with the building. That's a lawyer's answer, and you're not a lawyer. Something moved across his face and got put away. How many are there? 31. Wade looked out his windshield at the pumps for a moment. 31, he said. Do you want to ask me something else? No. He put the truck in gear. The septic inspection is the 14th. Somebody from the county will be out at 9 in the morning, and you should be there. Because if you're not there, they write it up worst case. Wade. But he was already backing out, and he pulled onto the highway and went west, and he drove past the motel without slowing down. If you've made it this far into Delia's story, take a second and hit subscribe, because what happens next is the part I've been waiting to tell you. She went back to the motel and she did the thing anyway. She got a shoebox of blank registration cards from the office, and she sat down on the carpet of room 9 at 4 in the afternoon, with the door open and the lot lights coming on outside. And she read the tags one at a time and wrote each one on a card and set the card in a row on the floor in front of her. It took her until 9 at night, because she was not fast and because she stopped a lot. Some of them she could tell you the whole story from the tag alone. 2 girls, October 1986. Grandmother came for them. Left the bag. Some of them were 4 words and a date and told her nothing. Some of them she read and set down and picked back up again. Halstead Wade, March 1997, 17. Delia sat with that one in her hand a long while, and then she got to a small hard-sided suitcase that had been under the far bed, avocado green, with a broken latch held shut by a leather belt that was not the suitcase's belt. The tag was tied to the handle. August 1989. Delia knew that name. Not from a list, from a hand-lettered sign out front of a diner. from a check she had written for a burger she hadn't ordered, from a woman who had told her she would rather hear it sitting down. She sat there on the floor with the suitcase across her knees and did the arithmetic she did not want to do. 1989. Inez was 47 now, 12 years old. At 11 that night, Delia parked on the gravel across from the diner with the lights off. The dining room was dark. There was one light burning in the back where the office was, and a Buick parked at the side door. There were 4 bags in that room she never got to that night. She left the cards in a row on the carpet and the pen on top of them, and she did not go back for the last 4. And she would think about that later, and about how close she came to reading them in a different order. She sat in the truck for 8 minutes with the avocado green suitcase on the seat beside her. Then she picked it up in both hands because the belt made it awkward, and she got out and crossed the road. Inez opened the side door with a dish towel over her shoulder and a set of keys in her hand. On her way out, and she saw the suitcase before she saw Delia. Everything in her face stopped at once. No, Inez. No, take that back. She put a hand on the door frame. Take it back where you got it. I can't do that. You can. You put it in your truck and you drive it back out there and you shut the door, and I will never say one word about it to anybody in my life. Delia stood on the concrete step with the suitcase hanging off both hands and her back on fire and did not move. It's got her name on it, she said. Inez looked at the tag then. She looked at it for a long time, at the manila and the string and the slanted blue handwriting, and something went out of her legs and she sat down on the second step of her own back door in the cold in November. August, she said. August, 1989. She left on a Tuesday. Inez had her hands in her lap. I know it was Tuesday because Tuesday was the day my father worked the late shift at the elevator, and she waited for it. I got home from school and there was a plate of food with a towel over it and she was gone. Inez, 35 years. Her voice was flat as a table, and all that time I knew exactly what happened. She got tired of us and she got in a car with somebody and she went. That's the story. Everybody in this town knows that story. I have told that story to my own kids. Delia set the suitcase down on the concrete because she could not hold it anymore. I don't know what's in it, she said. I want you to know that. I didn't open one single bag in that room. Yours is the first one that's going to get opened, and you're the one who's going to open it. Don't do that. Do what? Don't make it a gift. Inez looked up and her eyes were wet and furious at the same time, which is a hard thing to watch on a woman who has spent her whole life not doing that in front of people. You don't get to hand me my mother like she's a package. You don't get to drive up here at 11 at night with a suitcase and stand there being kind at me. Okay, you've been here 3 weeks. /19 days, Delia said. You told me, and you're right, and I still don't know what else to do with it, Inez, because it's got your mother's name on it and I'm not going to be the 4th person in a row who decides you can't handle it. That was the sentence that did it. Inez sat on her back step with her keys still in her hand and looked out at the dark lot where the pumps were. And after a while she said, bring it in the kitchen, not out here. They put it on a stainless prep table under the fluorescent light, and Inez cut the belt off with a boning knife because the buckle was seized, and then she stood there with both hands flat on the lid and did not open it for 4 minutes. You can go, she said. I can stay. You can go, Delia. So Delia went and sat in her truck, and she did not turn the key and she did not leave, and about 20 minutes later the kitchen light was still on and she could see through the window that Inez had not moved from the table. She waited an hour and 10 minutes. When Inez came out, she came all the way to the truck and stood at the window with her arms crossed against the cold, and Delia rolled it down. There's clothes in it, Inez said. A hairbrush. Her good shoes, which she would not have left, which means she thought she was coming back for them. Okay, there's a school picture of me from 6th grade in the envelope with my name on it in her handwriting. Delia didn't say anything. And there's a shoebox, Inez said, with 22 letters in it. The letters were addressed to Inez Salas in care of the motel, and every one of them had a Bakersfield, California postmark, and they ran from November of 1989 to March of 1993. Not one of them had been opened. There was a piece of notebook paper folded on top of them, and on it, in blue ballpoint, in that slanted hand. Theodora sent these here because she knew he watched the mailbox at the house. I told her I would get them to the girl. Her father came to me in January of '90 and stood in my office and told me what would happen if I did. She was 12 years old. Then she was 15, and I told myself next year. Then she was grown and running the cafe, and I could not think of one way to walk in there with a shoebox. I've been a coward about this for a very long time, and I am sorry. Whoever finds this, do better than I did. Inez read it standing up at 2 in the morning in a diner kitchen. Then she put it down and picked up the oldest envelope and opened it with a paring knife and read about 2 lines and had to stop. She did not read another one for 11 days. On the 12th day, she drove out to the motel at 6 in the morning and sat in her Buick in the lot with the engine running until Delia came out in a coat over her pajamas and got in the passenger side. I read them, Inez said. All of them. Saturday night. Started at 8. Finished around 4 in the morning. She had both hands on the wheel of a parked car. She was in Bakersfield. There was a cousin out there, my great-aunt's girl, and that's who took her in. Work in a packing house, then a laundry, then back to the packing house. Okay. She wrote every 3 weeks. Sometimes every 2. Inez's jaw moved. In the second one, she says she is sorry she couldn't take me with her, and she'll explain it to my face someday. In the 9th one, she sends me $2. $2, Delia. Taped to the paper. It's still taped to the paper. Delia sat very still. They get better, Inez said. That's the thing nobody would guess. They get better as they go. She stops apologizing around 1991. And starts telling me about her life. There's one that's just about a woman at the laundry who kept a radio on the wrong station on purpose. When did they stop? March of 93. Inez finally looked over. The last one has an address on it. A real address, an apartment, and she says she's got a room with 2 beds in it, and she is coming for me in June, and I should not tell my father. And that's it. That's the 22nd letter. Inez's hands came off the wheel and went back on it. June of 93, I turned 16. Nothing happened in June of 93. Nobody came. I'm not angry at Ophelia, she said a minute later, which was not true yet but became true. Her father was a real thing. He'd have burned that building down. That's not me being dramatic. That's a thing he said out loud in front of witnesses about a man over in Portales in '84. On the back of that last envelope, somebody had written a phone number with a Bakersfield area code in pencil. Inez did not call it that night or that week. The town did not go the way anybody expected. Delia had braced for doors slammed in her face, and she got a few. She knocked on a house on the east edge, and a man about 60 looked at the tag she was holding and said, "That's not my mother's name," and shut the door, and he was lying, and they both knew it, and she left it on the porch and it was gone by dark. But mostly what happened was quieter and stranger than that. A woman drove out on a Saturday morning with 2 grown daughters in the car and asked if she could just look at the tag. Not take the bag. Look at the tag. She stood in the doorway of room 9 and read her aunt's name off a piece of manila, and then she said, "Okay, do you want it?" Delia said, "No." The woman kept looking at the tag. My father told us for 3 decades she never left this county, that she was still around here somewhere and just didn't want us. She put her hand out and touched the string and took her hand back. She left. It's on a piece of paper in a dead woman's handwriting. That's all I came for. Her daughters walked her back to the car, one on each side, and none of the 3 of them said anything on the way. The high school principal came and took a green duffel out of there without a word and put it in his trunk and shook Delia's hand twice. A man in his 80s came with his son driving him, and he sat in the kitchen chair by the window because he couldn't stand that long, and he looked at a grocery sack with his own name on it from 1978, and he laughed until he had to wipe his face. "I forgot I did that," he said. "I forgot I ran off. Isn't that something? 46 years old and I packed a sack and got as far as this parking lot. 11 bags went home in 12 days. And on the 5th of December, the county clerk mailed Delia a notice that at the regular meeting on the 18th, the Board of County Commissioners would consider a motion regarding the structure at parcel 417. And the words in the motion were unsafe structure and public nuisance and abatement. The septic had failed its inspection on the 14th of November. That was true, and she had known it was coming. What Wade had done with it was put the failure and the sign in the pool into one motion with the word abatement at the end of it. And abatement means they take it down. Reuben looked at the notice on the counter at the hardware and read it twice. "He's not wrong about the tank," he said. "I know he's not wrong about the tank. $14,000, and you don't have $14,000. I have $940, Reuben." He folded the notice along its own crease and handed it back. "Then you'd better talk on the 18th, he said. Wade came out to the motel on the 16th, 2 days before the meeting, and this time he got out of the truck. He walked down the row and looked at the open door of 9 from about 15 feet away, which was as close as he got, and then he came back to where Delia was standing by the office with a caulk gun in her hand. "/12, he said. "12 what?" $12,000 and I'll pay the tank pump out so you're not walking away from a violation. He watched the highway while he said it. You take that Thursday morning before the meeting and I pull the motion off the agenda. Nobody has to sit in that room. And the building comes down in the spring. And what's in it? Wade was quiet for a second. Boxed and stored, he said, climate-controlled unit up in Clovis on me, and I'll pay it 24 months out. That's not nothing, and you know it's not nothing. Dahlia set the caulk gun on the windowsill. /24 months, she said. And then what? And then the 24 months are up and it's somebody else's problem. That's what everybody's said about that room since 1997. Wade put his hands in his jacket pockets, and for a second he looked like he was going to say the other thing, the real one. And Dahlia watched him decide not to. Thursday morning, he said, /9 o'clock. That offer's good till then. The commission met in the same back room where she had bought the place, under the same buzzing lights, and there were about 60 people in a room with 40 chairs. Dahlia had written something out on the back of 4 registration cards, and by the time they called her name, she knew it was worthless, and she stood up anyway with her hand under her stomach because at 7 months that is simply how you stand up. She was bad at it. She said the thing about the septic wrong, and she got the ordinance number wrong, and she said sorry twice in the first 30 seconds. She heard herself doing it and could not stop. Somebody's phone went off in the back, and she lost her place entirely and had to look down at the cards. Then she put the cards on the chair. I bought a building, she said. That's what I thought I bought. I'd been in the motel business since I was 17, and I can tell you the turn cost on a room and how long a mattress lasts, and I thought I was buying 14 doors in a highway. The room was quiet. There's a room out there with 31 bags in it that belong to people from this town. 20 now. I've been giving them back. She looked at the front table. If you abate that building, you abate them too. They go in the same dumpster as the drywall, and I don't think anybody at this table wants to be the one who signs that, because I've met about 4 of you now, and you're not like that. She sat down. Her hands were shaking so hard she put them under her legs. The chairman asked if there was any other public comment. Reuben stood up in the 4th row, and he had his hat in his hands again. I was born 9 miles from this table in 1965, he said. I carried a footlocker into that room in 1980 for $1. He turned around, which you are not supposed to do at a public meeting, and looked at the room instead of the table. Every one of us in here knows what's behind that door. We've known our whole lives, we just didn't want to be the one who carried it out. Then he sat down and put his hat on his knee. They voted at 9:40, 3-2 against the motion. The woman who flipped was a commissioner from the north end of the county who had not said one word during the whole hearing, and who had driven out to the motel 2 Sundays before that and stood in the doorway of room 9 for 10 minutes without going in. Wade Halstead voted for his own motion and lost, and he gathered his papers and put them in a canvas folder and left through the side door before the next agenda item. And Dahlia watched him go and understood exactly nothing about what she had seen on his face. She got back to the motel at 11:30, and the lot lights were on, and Benny had left the office light burning for her. The cards were still in a row on the carpet of room 9 where she had left them 3 weeks before. 27 of them, with the pen lying on top. 4 bags left. She was 7 months pregnant, and she had been on her feet since 6, and there was a septic tank in her future that cost more than her truck. Instead, she got down on the floor one more time and pulled the last 4 toward her. A canvas gym bag. Wells, T. June, 1982. A cardboard box tied with twine. No name. 1991. Left in the office. A brown vinyl overnight case with a broken zipper pull, and behind it, shoved back against the wall under the window where the chair was, a soft-sided bag in a plaid pattern that had been fashionable for about 18 months in the 1990s. Dahlia turned the tag over. Vance, Corrie, January 19, 1997. She read it 4 times. Vance was her mother's name before she married the man who gave Dahlia his. It was on the back of every photograph in the shoebox she had cleared out of a rental in Amarillo 3 years ago, and on the little card taped inside the cabinet over the stove, under the light that never went off. And the 19th of January, 1997, was Dahlia's birthday. She got up off that floor faster than she had gotten up off anything in 4 months, and she took the bag by both handles and lifted it, and it was heavier than it looked. She carried it to the office and put it on the desk under the lamp, and then she sat in the swivel chair and looked at it for 11 minutes without touching the zipper. Her own rule had been that she would not open a bag until she knew who it belonged to. I know who it belongs to, she said out loud, and pulled the zipper. On top was a man's flannel shirt, red and black, folded the way you fold a shirt when somebody is watching you do it. It smelled like nothing at all. Delia never did find out whose it was, and she stopped needing to know. Under the shirt were 3 newborn outfits, the snap-up kind, still on their little plastic hangers with the price stickers from a department store in Amarillo that had gone out of business before Delia was old enough to drive. They had never been worn. All 3 of them still had the cardboard collar tabs in. At the bottom of the bag was a cigar box with a rubber band around it, and the rubber band came apart in her fingers. Inside there was a Polaroid, a set of car keys on a ring with a plastic 4-leaf clover, and 2 folded pieces of paper. The Polaroid was crooked, and half of somebody's thumb was over the corner of it. A young woman was sitting up in a bed with a blue coat still on over her shoulders, holding a baby that was maybe 4 hours old. Another woman's arm and the side of her shoulder were in the frame, reaching in to steady the baby's head, and the flash had gone off against a mirror on a dresser behind them. Delia knew the room. She had been sitting on that bed 6 hours earlier. She knew the woman too, though she had never seen her at 22, and had only known her with the gray coming in and the reading glasses and the little laugh she did when she was embarrassed. The first folded paper was 2 lines in her mother's handwriting, which Delia would have known upside down in a dark room. "Keep it for me. I'll be back when I can do it right." The second paper was longer, and it was in blue ballpoint in that slanted hand. "Ice on the highway from the 17th, both directions closed." Girl walked in from a truck that let her off at the crossing. No coat but a blue one. No bag but this one. 7 months along by the look of her, and more like 9. Put her in 9 because 9 has the good heater, and the wall is shared with my kitchen so I could hear her. Baby girl born the 19th of January about 4 in the morning. The Aguirre boy brought his mother up in his truck as far as the cattle guard, and the 2 of them walked the rest. His mother has done this before, and I have not. Both of them came through it fine. 9 pounds, 1 ounce on the produce scale from the kitchen, which is not accurate, but is what we had. Girl left on the 23rd when they opened the road. Would not take money. Took the baby and the blue coat and the keys, and said the rest could stay because she was coming back for it once she got herself straight. I told her there was no hurry. She was not lying to me. She meant it when she said it. I have been doing this a long time, and I know the difference. 9 stays made up. Delia read the whole thing 3 times and then set it down flat on the desk and put both hands on the edge of the desk and breathed. At 6 in the morning, she drove into town and stood in front of the hardware before Ruben unlocked it. And when he came around the corner with his coffee, she was holding the second piece of paper. He read it standing on the sidewalk in the cold. Then he handed it back and looked out at the street for a while. "That was the storm in '97, he said. "We lost power 4 days. My mother worked at the clinic here, and there was no getting to the clinic, and Ophelia called down to the house at about 11 at night and said, 'Get your mother.'" He rubbed his jaw. "We got the truck to the cattle guard and it wouldn't go on the ice past that. Walked the last half mile with her bag. You were there." "I was in the office," Ruben said. /32 years old and useless. She sent me in there to boil water on the hot plate, which I have since learned is what they tell you to do so you'll go away. A truck went past and he watched it go. I remember the girl. Brown hair, real young, wouldn't tell us her last name for 2 days. Corey Vance. She told Ophelia eventually. She didn't tell me. He took the paper back and looked at it again. There was a baby in that room. I heard it through the wall while I was standing at a hot plate. And that's you. That's me. Ruben handed it back for the second time, and this time he kept hold of the corner for a second before he let go. "She kept that bed made from that January to the day she died," he said. "Every one of us thought she was doing it for a ghost. She was doing it for a girl who said she was coming back." Delia drove out to the motel and did not go to bed. She went into room 9 and sat down in the kitchen chair by the window, the one with the varnish worn through under both legs, and looked at what Ophelia had looked at, which was a mile of highway running west, and the pole with the sign on it and nothing else. Her mother had kept a light burning in a kitchen every night from that January until the September she died. Delia had asked about it 4 times in her whole life and had gotten 6 words back every time. She had assumed it was a fear of the dark, and later than that she had stopped assuming anything and just left it on when she stayed over. Because that was easier than the conversation. Sitting in that chair, she finally understood that her mother had not been leaving a light on for herself. "You could have told me," she said to the window. Nobody answered, because nobody was there, because her mother had been dead 3 years and the woman who could have explained it had been dead too. Delia put her hands on her stomach. "I'm going to be the kind of person who says things out loud," she said. That's the whole deal. I'm telling you now so you can hold me to it. She drove out to Halstead Salvage and Grading on the 2nd of January with a green army duffel in the bed of her truck. The yard was 3 acres of graded calish behind a chain-link fence, with a scale house and 2 excavators in a shop building with the doors open. Wade came out of the shop wiping his hands and stopped about 10 feet short when he saw what she was carrying. No, he said. I'm not going to tell anybody, Delia said. But you have to take it. Put it back. I've put back 11 of these and not one person has told me to put it back. She set it on the ground between them. March 1997, 17. That's all it says. That's all I know, and it's all I'm ever going to know unless you say something. And you don't have to say anything. Wade looked at the duffel on the caliche. Do you know what's in it? No. I didn't open a single one of them. Not one. Not one. She said. Not even my own. That got his head up. Your own. January 19th, 1997, Delia said. Vance, Corey, I was born in that room, Wade. 4 in the morning during the ice storm. I didn't know that until 11 days ago and I bought the building in October. Wade stood there in his own yard with his hands hanging. I was going to Denver, he said finally. I had a job lined up through a guy I knew, hanging drywall and a bus out of Clovis on a Tuesday. I brought that bag up to Ophelia on the Sunday because my father would have gone through it if I left it at the house. He looked at the fence. Sunday night, my father had his first stroke, not the one that killed him, the first one, and you stayed. I stayed, and then I ran his outfit, and then it was my outfit, and then I was 52 years old sitting on a county board voting on culverts. He said it without any self-pity, which somehow made it land harder. That bag's got a bus ticket in it, never turned it in. $14. Delia didn't say anything because there wasn't a thing to say that wouldn't have been an insult. Wade picked the duffel up by one strap. He didn't open it. He carried it into the shop and Delia heard him set it down somewhere. And when he came back out, he had his hands in his pockets. You're going to need that tank done by August, he said. The extension they gave you is 12 months, but the clock started in November, so it's August. I know. There's a super running the tower crews out of the yard east of here. 60 men, and they're in trucks and in Portals at 90 a night. He looked at the highway. I'll give him your number. He did, on the 6th of January, and by the 15th she had all 4 open rooms rented Monday through Thursday at $70, and she never once heard Wade Halstead mention it. Not that winter, and not since. Inez called the Bakersfield number on the 9th of January, at 9:40 at night, from the office at the back of the diner with the door shut. A woman answered on the 4th ring. The whole call was 19 minutes. Delia knows that because Inez told her, and Inez knows it because she looked at the phone afterward and it was the only fact she could hold on to for about an hour. Her mother was 72. She had been in the same apartment complex since 2004. She had a photograph of a 12-year-old girl in a school picture frame in her kitchen and had never taken it down. And in May of 1993, Inez's father had driven 14 hours to Bakersfield, found the packing house, waited in the lot until shift change, and told Teodora Salas to her face that her daughter had said she never wanted to see her again. She believed him. That is the entire tragedy, and there is no more to it than that. She believed him, and she stopped writing, and 31 years went by. She asked me if it was true, Inez told Delia, 60 seconds into the phone call. Before hello, practically, she said, I have to know if it was true. What did you say? I said I never got the letters. Inez had to stop for a second. And she said what letters? Delia went into labor on the 4th of March at 4 in the afternoon, which was 9 days early, in the middle of the first real storm since January. Benny drove. He had been off shift 6 hours and had not slept, and he drove that Corolla with the bad tire, 9 miles to the county clinic at 40 miles an hour with both hands on the wheel like a man carrying soup. Inez rode in the middle seat with her hand on Delia's back. You're doing fine. I'm not doing anything. It's doing it. That's the correct attitude, Inez said. Keep it. The baby came at 11 minutes past 7, 12 minutes after they got her into a room, and the nurse practitioner said afterward that she had never in her career seen anybody cut it that close and be that calm about it, and Delia said she hadn't been calm. She'd been busy. A girl. 6 pounds 14 ounces on a scale that was accurate. They wrote Ophelia Vance Rennick on the paperwork, and Inez read it upside down off the clipboard and said the name out loud once, and then had to go stand in the hallway. Spring came early that year. By the end of April, 22 of the 31 bags had gone home. 9 were still in that room, and Delia has kept every one of them tagged off the floor on a shelf Benny built along the back wall out of 2x10s from the co-op. She is not going to throw them away. She has thought about it exactly once. The pool got filled in the third week of March. A backhoe and 2 loads of pit run showed up on a Tuesday morning with no paperwork and no invoice, and a driver who said only that he was told where to dump it. And Delia stood in the office window with a 5-week-old on her shoulder and watched it happen and did not call anybody to ask. Benny Ocampo quit the truck stop on the 1st of April. He came into the office on a Sunday with his hands in his sweatshirt pocket, the same way he had come the first time, and stood there until Delia looked up. "I want to ask you something, and I want you to say no if it's no." "Okay, I want to run the desk." He said it fast. "Nights. You've got a baby, and you're doing the desk and the rooms and the laundry and the books, and you're going to fall over. I've been watching you not fall over for 5 months, and it's only working because you're stubborn." Delia put the pen down. "I can pay you $200 a week and the room. That's it. That's everything there is. That's 4 times what I make an hour at the truck stop for less hours. It's also this place, Benny. If the tank goes in August, I'm done and you're out of a job in a room in the same afternoon." Benny looked around the office, at the calendar, which was current now, at the board of hooks. "I've never had a job where anybody told me the risk before they hired me," he said. His name went on the account at the co-op in June and on the sign permit as the manager, which cost nothing and meant more than it cost. Teodora Salas came in April. She stayed 6 days in room 12, and on the second day she walked the whole row slowly with her daughter and stopped in front of 9. And Inez said, "That's it. That's the room." And her mother said, "I know. I stood in that doorway in 1989. They had 3 decades to get through, and they did not get through them in 6 days. Inez says they are working on it. She says some of it is going to stay broken, and that she has made her peace with which parts. She took the baby up behind the church on a Sunday in May when she was 10 weeks old. The graves up there are in 4 rows with a gravel path and a fence made out of pipe, and Ophelia Buenrostro's stone is granite and small and has her husband's name on the other half of it from 1983. Delia stood there with the carrier straps cutting into her shoulders and did not know what she had come to say. "/22, she said, eventually. "/22 of them went home. I've got 9 left and I'm keeping them, so don't worry about that part." The baby made a noise and settled. "I'm not going to tell you it was the right thing to keep them and not the right thing to hand them over. I don't know. You were 70 years old and you had a shoebox and no good way to do it." She shifted the carrier. "I had 1 bag and it took me 2 months and I nearly didn't." She stood a minute longer. "This is Ophelia," she said. "That's the only part I came up here to say. Room 9 got painted in the first week of May. Delia did the trim herself with the baby in a carrier on her chest, which is not recommended, and which she did anyway. The first guest to sleep in that room since 1997 was a welder out of Lubbock working the tower crews, who paid $70, slept 9 hours, left the towel on the rack, and never knew one thing about the building he was in. That is exactly as it should be. A room that has to be explained isn't finished yet. Inez came out that Friday and stood in the office with a pie she pretended was surplus, and she looked at the board of brass hooks behind the desk while Delia counted out change for the register. There were 14 hooks on that board, and there had been 13 keys on it since the day Delia bought the place. The brass key on the diamond fob was hanging on the 9th one. Where it went. "You got your key back," Inez said. "I got my key back." Inez put the pie on the counter and looked out the window at the pole sign, which Delia had gotten the variance for in February, and which came on every evening at dark and stayed on until she shut it off in the morning. "Keep the light on," Inez said. "That's the whole job. Everything else is just rooms."